There we go. All right, so as you can now see on the displays, you can see where I'm on social, at OffSec, Chief Content and Strategy Officer, which basically means nothing, really. I have to have a title, and I have the pleasure of having been at OffSec since essentially the start. And so it's been well over a decade of time at a company, which is kind of rare in this industry anymore, but I really can't see myself being anywhere else. It's definitely like an extension of my family. So it's been a great stretch of time. I do want to call out, thank you to SynCon for having me. Really good conference. I've been to Singapore a couple times before, but it's been for training and not a conference, and so it's really kind of cool to be able to come here and interact with everybody. Some really good questions, some good interactions yesterday and today, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the day. So thank you so much. Also, I want to give a shout out to whoever is doing your graphics and iconography for SynCon is really killing it. I've been sitting in the audience and just loving this board that is up there. It's like those little things are just so cool. So you're doing a great job with that. So keep that up. All that out of the way, what are we going to do? We're going to talk about Kali, and we're going to assume that most of you are aware of Kali. We like to think that it's an industry standard. Pretty much everybody uses it, whether it's from a hobbyist just wanting to start out all the way up to working professionals, government, military, intelligence services. Sometimes it's kind of scary, how many people utilize Kali on a day-to-day basis. So that's definitely kind of interesting. We have a long history, which I'll go into in the next one, but you can kind of see the basics about what we're doing with Kali. We have a long history, right? It goes really back 20 years. So people might be familiar with Kali Linux. Before that, it was Backtrack. Before that, Wapix and Wax. So it goes back quite a while. Just last year, we celebrated our 10-year birthday. I think it was in March of 23, and that was kind of cool. We had a good celebration. We did a lot of events and whatnot, but it's been really 20 years. In that history, there's I could really spend a lot of time talking about this, and I don't know that it's necessarily a good topic for today, but why the history, let's focus on Backtrack, since that was more widely known. Backtrack was initially just made to be a live CD, right? It wasn't really intended for installation or anything like that. And it was in the days of Knoppix and whatnot, where you would want to try Linux on the desktop, and instead of making the commitment of doing an installation, you'd boot up off a DVD and you'd just run a live system that way. Time would move on, and that moved to USB sticks, and you'd run your Linux installation on a USB stick. Time move on, and you start doing VMs, and people started having these VM installations. Well, we're at Black Hat one year, and we're walking around, and a new kernel exploit had just come out. And the Backtrack Linux was vulnerable to this kernel exploit. We had no way of doing an update. There was no update mechanism in Backtrack at the time. And so we're walking around that conference thinking like, oh my gosh, everybody running our stuff here is vulnerable. This is not so good. So we wanted to go back and refactor Backtrack, and it was running on Slacks, if you're familiar with Slacks from back in the day. And we moved it over to Ubuntu. Gave us an update mechanism, but in retrospect, that was a mistake. We were not happy with Backtrack 5 and the way it operated on Ubuntu. Number one, the UI was difficult as hell to deal with, but then the update mechanism and all the commercialization stuff that was built into there is very, very difficult. So we also had other problems too, like when we started, we really didn't know what we were doing, right? You know, just a bunch of computer nerds putting together a Linux distro to serve our purpose. We didn't know how to create a Linux distro at the time, but also at the same time, we also didn't know all the other things like how to set up IP protection, how to, you know, the copyright it properly, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't actually have the proper, let's say, protections around the Backtrack name as what we needed, and that was turning into a real problem. So we decided with, instead of doing Backtrack 6, we wanted to start from scratch. No code from Backtrack went into Kali. It was completely from the ground up, rebased off of Debian, which in retrospect, again, has been an amazing, amazing decision. And we figured since it has all new code, no connection to the old one, might as well give it a new name, have the protections and whatnot around there as well. And thus was born Kali Linux. I gotta also acknowledge that Kali got a huge boost, right, by Mr. Robot. You know, like we have certain items that that I think are worth calling out here. Somewhere on one of my slides here, I call out the UI. And we've all watched, say, Jurassic Park, right? And you got that scene where the girl is pulling up the computer, and she's like, oh, this is Linux. I know this. And you're looking at it like, that don't look like any Linux I've ever used, you know? And you always have your computer, your operating system, your Unix system showing up in TVs, movies, documentaries. And the producers feel the need to dress it up and make it look fancier and futuristic in a way that's not true for the desktop. And so one of the design goals for Kali, since we know that it shows up in so many things from news reports and whatnot, is we wanted the UI to be strong enough where it's usable for you on the desktop, but it also doesn't need to be updated or changed to look fancier for TVs and movies. And that has helped because you see that it shows up in many different locations as base Kali with that UI. The other thing that creates is, since Kali, there's no two ways around it. Hacking, pen testing, it's a sexy topic. A lot of people like to go into that area. And Kali, despite being made for a professional sort of user, is also many users' first introduction to Linux, which is weird, right? Like, you kind of think of hand-holding Linuxes, like, say, Linux Mint. That should be where most people go, but no, they kind of jump in the deep end of the pool and start running Kali. So we have to be cognizant of that as well. When we set up and use Kali, it has to be built for the professional, for the person that really knows what they're doing, but it also has to be comfortable enough and welcoming to a new user, because new users today are going to be the professionals tomorrow. And we don't want to have an antagonistic environment, both in the community as well as the platform itself, for these new users. So documentation becomes a very big deal within Kali, both as a reference guide for professionals that depend upon this operating system, as well as for new users that come forward. And again, thanks to Mr. Robot, there's a lot of people that just don't know anything about Linux and just jump right into Kali. We have maintenance of Kali is done by a staff of individuals, a small but powerful team that's funded entirely by Offensive Security, by OffSec. OffSec is really the commercialization of our open source effort. Backtrack came before OffSec, and as the story goes, Maddie, the founder of both, was walking around Black Hat one time, saw all these training companies that were utilizing his Linux distribution and making money off of it as part of their training, and figured, why am I not doing the same? So thus was born OffSec. But we also have a lot of other contributions by other companies as well. Really, Cloudflare, when you download Kali and if it downloads quickly, in most cases that's really based upon the generosity of Cloudflare. GitLab gives us an incredible license as well. Most of these are just like donations of services and infrastructure, but it really, really helps us out a lot. And so that is awesome. What I'm going to do here is dive into some aspects of Kali that you may not necessarily think of. Now, part of the challenge of an operating system like this is oftentimes people think about Kali as being a collection of tools. And that may have been true for a pen testing based operating system at one time. Again, the lore of Kali and Backtrack is, where did this come from? Matty was doing an engagement at a facility that was air-gapped, and he could bring in a DVD of tools. So he'd boot up his Linux system, run the tools on there, and that's what he had access to. And so every time he would show up and do the day's work, he would come across tools that were not there or did not work properly. He'd go back and then he would do updates that evening, get a better version for the next day, and go into work and just continue to do that cycle. At the end of the engagement, he had this nice live CD, and he turned around and just released it to the public, and thus was born our beloved Backtrack, which becomes Kali. That problem initially of getting all these attack tools together in one spot and having them run, we've been at this for over a decade now, right? So that's kind of a solved problem. That's like the cost of entry. There's a lot of tools and a lot of functions that we've built into Kali over the years that don't get a ton of attention, but are worth spending some time calling out and just making sure that you're aware of them and you take full advantage of them. And because they're a lot more than just these tools, these attack tools. The first of which is what I like to call Kali everywhere. The idea is we want the Kali tool set to be as close to you, the user, as possible at any given time, regardless of where you are. So yes, a lot of people think about running Kali in a VM. Great, it works wonderful with that. You can also install Kali bare metal on a server, on a laptop, run it like that. Yes, great, it runs great that way. But it can run in Docker. There's cloud instances, WSL. We have a version of Kali that runs on Android devices, so Kali NetHunter. It's everywhere. And that is the goal. We want this tool set to be as accessible to you as possible at any given time for a couple different reasons. Number one, as an attacker, if you get into a system and you want to pivot through there, what's the easiest way to do that? And can you get the Kali tool set on this system, and away you go. That's actually how WSL started for us. We were doing a penetration test. I got into a system and it had WSL on there. We didn't have a WS version of Kali at the time, and so it's like, well, dang, let's put our tool set in here so we could just load it on the system, and away we go. So Kali everywhere. You can see, and actually this is a screenshot out of our docs, and each one of these is a link that goes into much more detail. Obviously, there's too many in here to call out everything, but yes, the concept, the idea is we want Kali to be as close to you as possible at any given time. Secondly, custom images. So we do our version of Kali that we put out, and we think it's a nice, mass market version of Kali that is good and adequate and fits the needs of most users. However, we have a complete tool set put together for you so that every user can decide to customize Kali as they desire with their own customized release of Kali. And these are the exact same tools that we use every quarter when we do a release of Kali. These are all available to you, they're documented, and you can use them as you please. So, for instance, a lot of organizations might use Kali as their standard attack tool set for all their employees. And so instead of just using the version of Kali that we put out, they can run these scripts, have their own customized version with specialized tools, what specific meta packages they want loaded up. If you don't know what a meta package is, it's a package that points to other packages, as you can imagine. And so then that way we might have a forensics meta package. We might have a network scanning meta package. And so all the scanning tools would be in the scanning meta package. Maybe what an organization might decide to do is to set up their own internal tools in their own internal repo, put those together and tie that into these custom images and be able to have the specialized version of Kali that is updated in real time with our releases, but just as part of the build structure, the build process will then create this, this customized version. Really convenient. I know of a number of organizations that do this, and this is what they use. Oftentimes they'll pair it through with like maybe PXE, PXE boot install, automated install, and so then when their consultants are about ready to go out into the field, what will they do? They'll just take their laptops, plug them into this network, PXE boot it, and it will boot, install, and get a fresh custom version of Kali loaded up, ready for them to go out in the field with, without any artifacts from previous assessments. So that's fun. Kali Undercover. This was one of those features that really kind of surprised me that it became as popular as it was. It was something that we added kind of as a last minute sort of item right before a release. We had just moved to XFCE as our primary desktop environment. Before we had one version of the desktop environment for low-powered ARM devices and a different desktop environment for everything else. And I wanted a unified user experience across all devices. So we went to XFCE and made it pretty for all the devices. But when we were doing that, we've all been in those situations where that dragon is iconic, right? Like people know what that means. It's great to a certain extent where, like why does Kali show up in so many TV shows and movies is because you don't have to explain that someone's a hacker. You can just show that dragon and people understand, oh, this has to do with hacking. And it's I don't know how we wound up in that situation, but it is a shorthand way of saying, hey, watch out, this person is dangerous. They're going to be doing some sort of, thing, And so that dragon, there's a reason people get tattoos and stickers on their even cars, but laptops, it's very, very well known. But do you want to be sitting in a lobby somewhere with that iconic dragon real big on the screen where people walk by and they see that and they're like, oh, well, I know what he's up to. That could be problematic. So Kali Undercover changes the UI to make it look like Windows. Simple, basic. It's not relatively simple installation and configuration, but man, this has turned out to be super popular. We had some other features that we dropped in this 2019.4 release that I thought were like far bigger deals, but all anyone wanted to talk about was how cool Kali Undercover was. So you can't argue, people like what they like. There's even like people that show up on Mastodon a lot complaining that Kali Undercover does not run on other Linuxes. And it's like, well, it's open source. It's in our Git repo. Port it yourself. We have it there. But it's a fun tool. Kboxer. This may not be as sexy to talk about, but I think this is a very important item. What started Kboxer? We wound up in a situation where SSL was being updated quite a bit. OpenSSL was being updated. You think about all those security vulnerabilities that were happening. Different protocols were being depreciated. And we were stuck in a dilemma with Kali where we could update to the newest version and have all the security fixes and close off the vulnerability. So Kali was not vulnerable to attack, and you could browse and you could use the latest web browsers, et cetera, et cetera. And that's great. But by doing so, we closed off the ability to talk legacy protocols to older systems. And when you're doing an assessment, the last thing you want is your penetration testing focused operating system not to be able to talk to an old system, an old in-scope target that you come across, and because the protocols that it speaks are depreciated, now your version of OpenSSL doesn't work to talk to it. Now you got to download an old version of Kali and utilize that. That's not an acceptable solution. So what did we do? We created Kboxer, and what this is it uses containerized technology, primarily Docker, but it can be others as well, and it integrates that into the apt system that's on the back end of the system, and makes all of the commands that you're running, while they run inside of Docker, they feel native, they feel like they're running on the base host. So it completely abstracts all of this from the user. So this allows us circumstances where we can run old legacy software for attack purposes in its own isolated container with the old versions, while at the same time having the base operating system be fully patched and able to update and move forward. And so this has really solved a fundamental problem that we had dealt with for years before this point. And it has helped us quite a bit in packaging. So if you ever are into Debian packaging and you want to help contribute to Kali, you might wind up loving Kboxer. And so this is a feature that everybody that uses Kali takes advantage of, but they may not necessarily know what's happening on the backside of how we get some of these features to work. WinKex, this was another one that was really derived from a assessment that we were doing. And in this situation, what was occurring is WSL, Kali within WSL was working quite well, but people wanted a full desktop experience. And so we're using WinKex to make that happen. You can run Kali within WSL, but then launch your full Kali desktop within the system, and there's multiple different modes, including like, here's your Kali desktop, but as in the screenshot, it's a seamless mode, so your Kali applications are being integrated with your Windows applications. This is really good for reporting. You do your Kali, you go out in the field, you do your assessment, you collect all your data, then maybe you copy it back to your Windows-based workstation and you're writing the report. You can now use the native tools to process that data set on Windows while you write everything up in Word or whatnot. So this has been useful over the years. Now, I'm not going to try to say this word. It's German. I'll screw it up. I'm American, so I have a hard enough time with English. I'm not going to even try with German. But the idea behind this is people love when you're in a VM and you have the ability to do snapshots. It really allows you a lot of freedom. You can install a tool, you can break your system, and no big deal. Hit the undo button, rewind the snapshot, and away you go. But realistically, when you're doing assessments, oftentimes you want to run off of bare metal. You don't want to run inside of a VM. And you lose that ability to do file system snapshots and undo, upgrade your system, that sort of item. So we wanted that functionality built into bare metal Kali. And that is uncut to the bar, whatever. This was added in 2022. And it, as the bullet point describes it, it provides bare metal snapshots. We use BTRFS, but it allows full rollback of the operating system. So maybe you do an upgrade and the upgrade borks the system, you can't boot anymore, no big deal. You can revert the system back to your previous version and be okay. Maybe you update a tool, and now that this new version of the tool doesn't work as well, or it changes some type of functionality, and you're in the middle of an assessment and you don't need that, you want to stick with the old version. You can roll back and away you go. Along with full boot rollbacks, it also provides browsing on file system snapshots. So if you're familiar with, like, say, the Mac and Time Machine and how you can go in there and sort through and restore old versions of files and whatnot, you can do that with Kali as well when you set it up this way. Now, it doesn't install by default with this functionality. You have to jump through some hoops. It's all in our docs. But I'm not aware of another Linux that does this. There's no reason why there can't be. This is obviously, it's all open source. It's just a matter of configuration and documentation. But when we went looking for to put this functionality into Linux, we couldn't find anyone that actually had a standard updated version of this. There was a version of SUSE that had this at one point, but then they weren't maintaining it. So I'm not sure. Maybe other Linuxes have this, but I'm not sure. But it's an amazingly useful bit of functionality to have, and really gives you a lot of confidence while you're doing your assessments. Kali Boot Nuke. Now, this was controversial when we first launched it. It was kind of funny in a way. There was a bunch of, it reminded me of the old days. Remember, like, before Twitter, before social media, how everybody would get in arguments on Usenet? And that's like how you would spend your time, and that's where the original, like, VI versus Emacs arguments would come about. And I remember there was, like, this big controversy about, do you block ICMP on the border? And that was like a huge multi-year argument on Usenet back in the 90s. And I loved those arguments and those discussions. And when we launched Boot Nuke, it came about a similar sort of argument among some of the crypto groups. What is Boot Nuke? So it's best to describe it in a use case. We know that we use Lux to encrypt, have full disk encryption on a Linux-based system. And the way Lux works is there's a number of key slots that you can put in, and so then that way I might have one password, but I don't want to share my password with my coworker, and so I'll use the second key slot, and my coworker will put in their own password, and then that way we both have access to the drive and using our own password. And there's a limited number of slots that you have in there. What Boot Nuke does is it picks one of those slots and it uses that as a it changes the functionality where if you enter that password, instead of unencrypting the drive, unlocking the drive and allowing access to it, it dumps the Lux header, deletes everything out of there, and renders the drive inaccessible. So it provides a password that will just completely bork your system immediately. And it just happens in the same process as you would put in your Lux password. Now, why would you want to do that? I know that every time I cross through US border, even as an American citizen, they can grab my devices and tell me I either unlock it for them or they just keep the device and I don't have access to it anymore. And if I go out to a client and I do an assessment, I collect a bunch of sensitive data, that really puts me in an awkward situation because I don't own that data. I have NDAs. Am I going to tell the client, well, I'm sorry, I don't know if who has access to it now because I had to unlock the device and hand it off and they went off and did whatever with it. I don't know. This is where Boot Nuke can really help because what happens is you're at home, you set up your system, you put in your Lux passwords, you have that, and then Lux has a function where you can back up your Lux header to a file. And so you back it up to a file, throw it on a USB stick, copy it somewhere else, PGP encrypt it so it's secure, and now it's there at home and you have it, you're safe. You travel with your system, full disk encryption, you hack away, you spend your time during the assessment, you collect all the data. Then when you're done, you're ready to travel back, Boot Nuke, wipe your Lux header. Now your device is no longer accessible. There's no decryption keys on there. So you can travel through, and one of the big issues is you don't lie to border control. So like you don't want to be in a situation where you can unlock a device and you tell them I cannot. That'll get you in more trouble than anything else. And so this then creates a solution where you've rendered the system inaccessible. You go through and you can honestly tell the customs agent, I have no way to unlock the system. Our standard operating procedure when crossing any borders is to render the system inaccessible and then restore it back at the office. This is not something unique that we're doing to hide anything. This is just the way we protect client data, and it's standard process. And it works. You get back home, you restore your Lux header, you boot up off of a USB stick, you restore your Lux header, and now the system is accessible again. So not really a use case that the average person is going to have, I think, but when you're traveling with sensitive data, this is super useful. So I'm dumping a number of items in this slide here. Kali Autopilot, Kali Purple, Kali NetHunter. Let's start with Kali Purple. That was people think of Kali as a pen testing distribution, and it makes sense because that's where most of the attention goes. And again, pen testing is sexy, hacking is sexy. That's what people want to talk about. But when we started Kali, when we started Backtrack, all the way back, the goal of these actually was an InfoSec focused distribution, not just unique to hacking. But the fact is, a lot of the team we work in the offensive space, so that's where most of our focus goes. And we realized that we were falling behind of where we wanted to be on the defensive side. And some of the ways that we wanted to solve that problem, but we wanted to do it in a way that did not hurt mainline Kali at all. So we created a fork of Kali, Kali Purple, that is focused on defensive items, and it allows us the ability to solve these defensive challenges in creative ways, a safe place for experimentation without in any way hurting mainline Kali, with the goal of once Purple hits a point of maturation where it's working well, we're happy with the solutions that we have in place, we're not doing as much experimentation, we then merge Purple back into mainline Kali, and you're back to one version of Kali, and on install, you can select what type of functionality you want. Is it offensive? Is it defensive? If it is defensive, what type of defensive? And away you go. I will call out, we need help with this. As I said, most of the team involved with Kali is really focused on the offensive space, and so we don't have enough knowledge about the what needs to be done in the defensive area. So if you're interested in contributing to Kali, this is a great way of getting involved and pairing up. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So that is Kali Purple. Work in progress. It's definitely under heavy development. There's always a chaotic sort of element there. It won't always build. It won't always work. But as I said, it provides us quite a bit of opportunity for experimentation. Kali Autopilot, we launched at the same time as Purple, and it really kind of it's dual purpose for sure. The idea is it's a framework for automating attacks against systems. It works great on an offensive level where you can write a script and just run that. I know that I like to provide customers with something like this as well. I hack the heck out of their system, I write a report, that's great, but if I can also give them the ability of here, you can reproduce the hack easily by just doing this. And so then when you go through your remediation, if you want to validate that you've actually fixed it, you can just run the script, and when it stops working, you know that you've made progress. So Autopilot is great for that. It's also great on the defensive side because you can set up automated attacks to go against some infrastructure and see how well your defense capabilities really hold up to these attacks. And so this is a nice, quick way of automating that. And so, again, it's documented in the system. Kali NetHunter is pretty well known, I think. This is a version of Kali that runs on Android. There's a couple different versions of this. The one version that runs on rooted phones, and then also we have the rootless. I've used this quite a bit over the years. In fact, when I was teaching Pen 200 on a very regular basis, I would oftentimes pick one day where I'm teaching the class, getting everybody moving towards the OSCP, and I would teach the entire day off of an Android phone. I would just hook it up to the projector, have a keyboard and mouse, run the full Kali desktop, and I'd go the whole day running off of the phone, teaching OSCP, and not tell the students until the end of the day to demonstrate, that power, that capability, that it worked well enough that people they didn't know. They couldn't tell the difference, and that was fun. You can also do some cool things. It will pretend to be a network device, so you can plug it into a computer, and then it will register as a network device, and you can make it a higher priority item. So if you want to do like a pivot-based attack, you want to route systems, all its network traffic through your device, you can do that. It will act as a keyboard, and you can automate a bunch of typing. So Windows command and run PowerShell and do a backdoor that connects back to you, real quick. You could do that. This has really been helpful. Like assessments against retail companies and medical care companies, right? You sit down, and oftentimes you're at a desk. They have a computer, and the back of the computer is facing towards you. And they get up to go make copies of something or to do something, and you have a few minutes where their system is unlocked. You just take your Android device, your Kali NetHunter device, plug it into that system, boom, 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 you've taken over that system, unplug it, and they don't know, and it just takes a matter of moments, and you're done. And so that works really well. You're at a point of sale system, you're checking out, they turn around to grab more bags or something, you just plug it into their computer. 5 seconds later, it's yours. So NetHunter has a lot of flexibility. Being able to put the Kali tool set in a mobile handheld solution like that is extremely useful and powerful. I like to call out our documentation as one of the hidden features of Kali. Documentation is incredibly, incredibly important. And if you don't have a feature documented, you might as well not have the damn feature. So that is something that we spend a lot of time making sure our documentation is updated and current and usable. And on top of that, our documentation is completely open source, that anyone can come along and update it, and people do, and that's great. We love that. Sometimes people will come through and they'll be reading a help article and like, oh, this could be more clear. Maybe you forgot a step, you have a typo, whatever, boom, boom, boom. You can just make a quick contribution and clean that up, and away you go. Or they might go through the documentation and say, hey, I was looking on how to do X, Y, Z, and you don't have that. Here's a documentation page for that, and get that added to the item. This is one of the reasons I stress this a lot is we always want more people to contribute and help with Kali. It's an open source project. It's not just the Kali team, the full-time dedicated team that works on it. It's everybody. And so documentation is one of the easiest ways to start getting involved with Kali. And so if you're interested, especially people that are students that are trying to build up a resume, a CV, a work history, kind of like demonstrating their knowledge, getting involved in an open source project is a hell of a good way of doing that, and to demonstrate your creativity, your knowledge, your background. And Kali is here waiting with open doors at any given time for you to get involved and work on that. And so documentation is a quick, easy way for people to do that without having to understand the deep intricacies of Debian packaging. Kali tweaks. There's a lot of things that people like to change within Kali. We think the defaults are pretty good, but what works for me is not necessarily always what works for you, and we want to make some of these knobs and switches easier to change, along with some, again, documentation, some description about what these changes really mean. I find a lot of times people will use like random scripts they find on GitHub and whatever, and they'll run that on their Kali system, and it breaks things, or it makes stupid decisions for them, and they don't really understand what they're doing or why. They just think, oh, someone did this, so it must make it better. I don't really like those tools. I always feel like if those changes are that important or that good, instead of writing a script that you publish on GitHub or GitLab to run on top of Kali installation, just contribute the change directly and make the change that way. If it's a good idea, we'll integrate it in. But in some cases, it's definitely items that are matter of opinion, and so we have Kali tweaks, which provides a nice interface to quickly and easily change these items. And you can kind of see on the slide there a little bit about what it covers. The meta package management's a very important one for many people. A little bit of talk here, wrapping up about how Kali is distributed. I mentioned Cloudflare before. Our distribution network, I really gotta commend, OffSec has changed a lot over the years, right? Like when I started, we all fit in we'd go to Black Hat and we would all fit in a limo when we'd go out to dinner, the entire company. We would get in one vehicle and we'd go to dinner. And now we're over 300 people. When we first started, no one knew who we were. The certifications didn't matter. They didn't get you any phone calls for jobs or anything like that. And now, man, that OSCP has a life of its own, doesn't it? Like it's almost a de facto requirement to get a lot of jobs. So things have changed a lot over the years, and the company has changed a lot as well. But with all those changes and all that growth, Kali's been treated extremely fairly. We've all seen companies with open source tools where as the company grows and monetization kicks in and whatnot, the open source tool kind of starts to go downhill. And we've been very blessed, both the team as well as the community, that OffSec has been as fair and as open as what they have been with Kali. And one of the areas that is our distribution network for downloading Kali requires no registration, and there's no tracking, and there's no telemetrics within Kali whatsoever. Now that's important because when you start Kali up on a network, if it starts to beacon home and say, hey, I'm a Kali installation, count me. If you're a defender, you watch for that beacon and you know, okay, there's a Kali installation here. We can't have that. So the lack of telemetrics is extremely important for Kali's usability, but I tell you, it causes me personally, no end of headache because I can't tell anybody a 100% accurate answer as far as how many users Kali has, because there's no telemetrics. I don't have visibility into that. Nobody has visibility into that. You have privacy. When you download Kali, how does it work? You hit us, you go to the download page, you select what version, what flavor of Kali you would like to get. You know, do you want a bare metal? Do you want a VM? Do you want NetHunter, et cetera, et cetera? You pick that and you hit a redirector. That redirector then sends you to the fastest geographically close location for you to download Kali. And that's where things split. You might get sent to Cloudflare. And I love Cloudflare, and I can't say enough good things about them with how much that they give us. They have given us not just their biggest, most expensive enterprise license, they've made core changes to the way Cloudflare works to accommodate us, which blows my mind and is above and beyond what I could think of for any sponsor to go with, because our versions of Kali are quite large. And they, by default, did not cache any file as large as what our ISOs were. And so they changed their entire network to start caching larger files in order to accommodate Kali. So you can't say enough nice things about them. We average, this is a little bit dated, when I put together this slide, we were doing about 7 petabytes a month just on Cloudflare. Now, Cloudflare is about 50% of our traffic goes to Cloudflare. The other 50% goes to a network of community mirrors. So we're pushing 18, 19 petabytes per month of just people downloading Kali. That's a lot. And again, I can't tell you who these people are. I can't tell you how many, because I have zero visibility into the community mirrors, outside of the fact that we might redirect somebody over there. So that's great. It's great when it comes to privacy. But the fact that OffSec tolerates this, they make this sort of investment, and every business wants to know what are we getting in return for our investment. And I, go back to them and say, I can't tell you how many users we have. I can't even tell you exactly how many downloads we have. Can you please give me more money? That is a weird combination of items to tell any sort of business, but they understand and they respect and they know the importance of Kali within the community and the importance that this aspect of it really holds true. So I want to call that out. How can you get involved with Kali? Documentation, again, I call out Kali Purple. What tools should be included in Kali Purple and what configurations should they have? That is really one of the most important things that the team doesn't have by default. We got great Debian packaging engineers, but we don't have people on the team that understand a lot of these defensive tools. And so if we get good description, documentation of, you have this tool, this is the way it should be configured, this is going to be useful for users out of the box. Again, I mentioned how Kali is oftentimes people's first time touching Linux. So if somebody's like, oh, I want to be able to run a defensive tool, I want to be able to run a intrusion detection system, Kali Purple should have an intrusion detection system that works without having to do a lot of configuration. Now, granted, it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be optimal, because we all know if we've worked on those that they can take a lot of tweaking and building and whatnot, but I want it to be useful out of the box for a less experienced individual. But we need help with that, so you can help there. You can also help with generalized package management, updating packages, packaging up new tools. We have extensive documentation on how to create Debian packaging. I'm very, very proud of those documentations, of those documents, because they really walk you from no knowledge at all on how to package up a Linux tool for apt, for Debian's distribution system, all the way up to advanced packages with a lot of dependencies. And so if you're, again, a student and you're looking for a way of building up a reputation, this is a great way of doing that. And then, again, the generalized updates for the documentation. One of the last things I want to call out here is the roadmap for Kali is oftentimes driven based upon things that users submit. So if somebody comes along and says, hey, we have this great idea, look at this thing that we've put together or whatnot, we'll change our roadmap at a moment's notice and prioritize those items if they make sense. So we do have our roadmaps, we do have our plans for the next year, but we will change those quickly and easily if you come along with a good idea. So any sort of thoughts that you have, just create a bug report. We make it trackable. It's public. Again, it's open source, and we'd love to have you really be part of the team. Again, this is open source. Kali is not something that you should really look at as just provided for you. It's a community tool set that we all contribute to and we all have a degree of responsibility for. And on that note, I don't know if we have time for questions or whatnot, but that is my canned material. So if you have any questions or comments, throw them at me. Don't be gentle. I can take any comments, kind or critical, alike. It's okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. Backtrack and Kali have been part of my InfoSec journey, long. And I saw some people in the audience actually using Kali during your talk, so
Nice.
It's definitely spread. But yeah, does anyone have any questions?
While you think about that, I'll say, for me, one of my biggest oh shit moments on that was, it wasn't Mr. Robot. I was reading a Batman comic book, and the Kali dragon showed up in Batman. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like,
Okay.
that was awesome, you know. Now granted, it was the bad guy that was using Kali, and Batman went and punched him in the face. So that was something. But yeah, that was pretty cool. That meant something to me.
Well,
Yeah.
like if you provide a good resource, it can be used for good and bad, right? So
That's right. That's
but
right.
yeah, I have like a Kali sticker on one of my tablets, and no one ever questioned me about it. So I'm not sure if people just like, okay, don't ask that guy any questions,
Yeah.
or people don't know. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions? Well,
Don't be shy.
I assume that means you gave a very well-rounded talk with all the information included.
Yeah, yeah. I'll also call out, we do weekly office hours through OffSec on our Discord. Now, granted, I'm not doing it this week because I'm here, and I'm not doing it next week as well, but in general, I try to do, now it's US Eastern time, it's 1 o'clock, which that's kind of inconvenient here, but we do regular office hours, and I show up and answer questions for an hour a week, and that's open to anybody that wants to come and join our Discord. And we take Kali questions, OffSec questions, whatever makes sense. And we also tend to do a special office hour with just the Kali team after every release. We do Kali releases 4 times a year. Kali is a rolling distribution, so what does release mean? It really means that it's a snapshot of a point in time where we do a bunch of QA, make sure that it's solid, it's working, we package it up for distribution, put it out, and then we'll bring the Kali team together and do a open Q&A for everybody. So watch that. You know, you can RSS. I'm still a big believer in RSS. I know that makes me sound old, but I love RSS. But you can hook up subs. We have a Substack that pushes out. It's free. It's not one of those paid ones. That pushes out all of the blog posts that we do on Kali. So if you don't want to have to keep an eye on that, you can just subscribe to the Substack and then see the information. So you can stay up to date on releases and all those communications easily that way.